Hey everyone, it's Mr. Iden, and welcome back to SGT Discovery Kids, where we discover what God is teaching us through His Word. This week, we're learning about how one girl saved all of God's people. Yeah, you heard me right. It's a pretty incredible story. So let's jump into it. You guys remember how the past couple of weeks we've been talking about how the Persians came and they overtook Babylon, and how the king of Persia, King Cyrus, let the Jews go back to Jerusalem to start rebuilding the temple? Well, not all the Jews went back to Jerusalem. In fact, many of them stayed right where they were, which was now the Persian Empire. And so we fast forward years into the future, and there's a new king. And this king is looking for a wife. And so he decides, I'm going to find a new queen by throwing a big beauty pageant, and whoever wins is going to be my new wife. And so there's this young Jewish girl named Hadassah, or more commonly referred to as, by her Persian name, Esther. And so Esther enters into this beauty pageant, and it turns out that she wins, and she becomes the new queen of all of Persia, the new wife to the king. Now Esther had a cousin named Mordecai, and one day Mordecai overheard two of the king's officials, two people that worked for him, who were really mad at the king. And they were planning to kill the king. And so Mordecai runs over to Queen Esther and says, Esther, you have to tell the king. And so Esther tells the king, and the king is so grateful for what Mordecai has done. Mordecai saved his life. And there's another man named Haman. Now Haman worked for the king, and one day the king promoted Haman to number 2 in all of Persia. There was no one more powerful than Haman except the king. And when Haman would walk through the streets, people would have to bow at his feet. So one day, Haman was walking through the streets, and he saw Mordecai, and while everyone else was bowing, Mordecai would not bow. And so Haman got really mad at Mordecai, and when Haman found out that Mordecai was a Jew, Haman made a plan to kill all of the Jews everywhere, all of God's people. And so when Mordecai found out about this plan, he was crying, he was upset, he was in the streets wailing out loud, crying. And so when Esther found out that Mordecai was in the streets crying, she said, why are you crying? Why are you so upset? And so Mordecai said, did you not hear? There's been a plan to kill all of the Jews, to kill you, to kill me, to kill all of God's people. You have to do something. Then Mordecai said to Esther, who knows, maybe God has made you queen for this exact reason, that you could save the Jews. So Esther agreed, and she said, but there's one problem. The king has a rule that no one is allowed to go to him unless he is invited. And if you go to him unannounced, it could be punishable by death. But Esther said, I have to be brave. The people of God, their lives are on the line. So a couple of days later, Esther goes to the king. Now, the king had a golden scepter, and so if the king held the scepter by his side when someone came unannounced, that meant that that person was going to be put to death. But if the king held out his golden scepter, his staff, when the person came unannounced, that meant that the king would talk to them. And so when Esther came to the king held out his scepter and they spoke. And the king said, Esther, my queen, my wife, what do you want? I would give you anything. And Esther said, I want you and Haman to come to a feast that I'm putting together for you guys. And so Haman and the king say, okay, we'll go. And so while they're at the feast, the king says, Esther, what do you want? And Esther says, King, there's been a horrible plan. The plan is to kill all of the Jews. And I'm a Jew. I would die as well. And the king gets angry and he says, who would do such a horrible thing? And Esther says, Haman. Haman made this plan because he hates the Jews. And so the king punishes Haman. And then the king, Esther, and Mordecai all come together and make a plan that eventually saves all of the Jews. All of God's people were safe. And we're going to learn more about this in the verse of the week with Mr. Iden. Mr. Iden, let's go to you. Why is it so dark? Pastor Michael, you're back?
That's right. And I'm doing the verse of the week this week, so let's get this thing started.
Well, all right, Pastor Michael, let's go to you.
Hey everybody, I'm Pastor Michael, and welcome back to the verse of the week. We're learning about Queen Esther and how she grew up a normal girl like anybody else, but God placed her in the palace. She became a queen so that God would use her to save her people. We learn more about this in Esther chapter 4, verse 14. Here's what it says. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. But you and your father's family will perish, and who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. This is what Mordecai told Esther to encourage her when she didn't know what to do. He reminded her that God was with her. Let's read it together. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. Great job. Now guys, remember, you might find yourself in situations you're not comfortable with or not used to or you've never been in before. But don't forget, God's with you, and just like Esther, He's going to show you what to do. Thanks for joining us for another verse of the week. We love you guys. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Pastor Michael. We always love learning about the verse of the week. Now, let's go to the animal of the week with Miss Natalie. Miss Natalie, take it away.
Hey guys, Miss Natalie here. Welcome back to another Animal of the Week. This week's animal is an insect with brightly colored wings with unique patterns. Can you guess what it is? That's right, it's the butterfly. Did you know that there are over 2,000 different species of butterflies? They can only live up to a week, or even some species up to a year. Butterflies feed on nectar from flowers and are able to taste things with their feet. It even uses its wings to protect themselves against predators. In the first part of a butterfly's life, it actually starts as a little caterpillar and then enters its chrysalis and eventually emerges into a beautiful butterfly. The caterpillar didn't know that one day it was going to become a butterfly. Neither did Esther know that God was going to call her to become queen to save her people. Thanks for joining me for another Animal of the Week. See you next time.
Thanks, Miss Natalie. We always love learning about the animal of the week. Now remember, you guys may find yourselves in some situations that you never thought you'd be in. Like Esther, she never thought she'd be a queen. But if you keep your eyes on Jesus, He will show you exactly what to do, and you will be a blessing to many people. I love you guys. Thanks for joining us this week. Be blessed and be a blessing.